So, welcome to the Staying Well session. We're going to give you strategies, all kinds of things to help your child and teen cope with anxiety. And what is anxiety? You know, that is feeling worried, fear, panic, the kind of agitation. What I mentioned earlier, that COVID did result increase in anxiety amongst kids. Part of the reason why, if you cast your mind back to the various iterations of COVID. Kids were reporting pre-vaccine being worried about getting COVID. Then suddenly they're going from remote to hybrid, all those iterations. They miss key opportunity to practice social skills, to practice the school readiness skills, to deal with all kinds of new and novel situations. Even adults, when they returned to the workplace, were trepidation and expressing fear. But they had a whole bunch of tools in their toolkit to deal with that, a wealth of experience to draw on to deal with all kinds of challenging situations. The take-home message here is it's no surprise that kids would be reporting higher levels of anxiety because they've missed all kinds of opportunities to deal with and cope with all kinds of challenging situations. They're reporting being socially awkward. They're reporting having difficulty coping with little things, such as, even kids having difficulty going back into the classroom and back into the school. The good news is there's 100 jillion, trillion, billion strategies that work, that are evidence-based, giving these kids more tools in their coping toolbox. In that sense, it is like a vaccine. The reality is there will always be anxiety-inducing events, maybe not on the level of a pandemic, but maybe it's a mortgage payment, maybe it's an essay, maybe it's an exam, or it's a deadline of some sort. So these kids will always need the tools to deal with those kind of situations that life throws at you, because if anything life teaches you is you never know what's going to happen next. So what we know about anxiety, and a condition that's been studied very extensively and definitely been informed by brain scans. So we know two brain areas are impacted. One is the amygdala, that's where emotions reside. The other is the prefrontal cortex, that's where thinking center of the brain. Armed intruder breaks into your house, you have an OMG response, and that is a result of the amygdala. It reacts faster. It issues a signal. Suddenly your body is prepped with all kinds of hormones that preps your body to fight off the armed intruder or run away from that armed intruder. That's the fight or flight response. The challenge for kids is that kind of response is being activated in the absence of an armed intruder for things such as trying something new, going to a birthday party, or giving an oral presentation. So one of the things that happens after that armed intruder is arrested and put in handcuffs is the thinking part of the brain issues the stand down order, and then suddenly the chemicals stop. The fight or flight response is gradually terminated. So one of the things that we're going to talk a little bit about is that anxiety is actually adaptive. It's a good thing. It keeps you safe. You ran away from that armed intruder, or maybe you fought them off. But sometimes when that amygdala is kind of hyperactivated, you get that kind of big emotional response as an amygdala hijack. And we need to sometimes put a leash on that old guard dog. And sometimes that thinking center of the brain is having a little difficulty doing that. So we're going to talk about strategies that's going to address both parts of the brain that are implicated in anxiety. One of the things we know that there is an anxiety cycle. When I talked about the armed intruder and kids are reporting the fight or flight response, the anxiety being activated by things such as going to a birthday party. And that's being perceived as a dangerous situation. It's activating that fight or flight response. And sometimes when kids are anxious about that, they try to avoid things. Maybe they say, I've got a headache, I've got a stomach ache. The brief relief, because they don't have to go to that fear-inducing birthday party. And unfortunately, what happens is that reinforces the anxiety. That anxiety grows. So we're going to talk about strategies that are going to target that anxiety cycle, targeting the negative thinking that occurs, the negative feeling, the negative behaviors such as avoidance, and all those bodily symptoms that accompany the anxiety cycle. And turn these kids into anxiety warriors. We're thinking of actually getting t-shirts to celebrate that, and helping these kids to face their fears, because that's the single most effective strategy, is facing your fear head on. Definitely, maybe it's just going to a birthday party for a little bit of a time, getting into that water just for a little bit, but we're going to talk about strategies to facilitate that. There are some general strategies before, general kind of approach to helping kids who are anxious. And really it's called the validation strategy. And this is how we build resilience in kids. This is how we build independence in kids. But really, it's about making kids confident again, making them willing to take on all kinds of challenges that life's going to throw at them, big or small, even if something as trying new things as they go about, as they go their way towards being an adolescent. Okay, just before we do that, I've been reminded by my director, producer, and everything else, is that to put the questions in the chat, and the questions are anonymous. If you want, and definitely for some questions, we'd be happy to respond to you the next day. You might require more information. So validate strategy. And really it's about referring to it as validate and push. This is how you can support your child or teen to face their fears in a supportive way. There are some don'ts, and the don't is perhaps best illustrated by this example. If you think about that kid from kindergarten to grade 3 during COVID, and suddenly they're returning to a classroom, kind of a full-time basis, and they've been staying home for a bit, not meeting a bunch of people, not trying different things, not having to navigate all the social situations that you have to do. A lot of kids that return to school was a little bit anxiety inducing. Trying to get them out of the car and into the school was a bit of a challenge. And sometimes those kids were clearly in distress. You could see it as plain as day. And sometimes your response, because how could you not? You wouldn't be a human being if you didn't. Your natural response would be to hug them and kiss them. Now, unfortunately, that is a response that kind of tells the kid, like, man, there is something really dangerous about school. So we worked with the mom, and she steeled herself going forward. At that point in time, I didn't know who I wanted to hug more, mom or the kid. Steeled herself to go into the school, encouraging that kid. Now, going forward, we have to tell that kid, to slow down, walk into the school, not run into the school, because she found a whole world of enjoyable things, friends, loves the teacher, all of those things. So we got to reassure our kids, but not too excessively. The other challenge too is not taking control and stepping in. When you see a kid sometimes and they're sitting at that birthday party and they're not interacting with anyone, it's really hard not to take them by the hand and make them say hello. We want to encourage them to try that, but sometimes it's not good to step in. And why it's not good to do that? Sometimes that'll inspire a shutdown. We want to inspire change. And we do that by using the word and not but. So it's illustrated here. I understand you're really worried right now, and I am going to help you. So that's that much. Too much validation, not excessive reassurance, will not inspire the change that they need. Too much pushing will cause the shutdown. And the goal is to balance the two. No, validation doesn't mean you agree, as illustrated here. My math teacher doesn't like me, and you validate their feelings. You're really certain that she hates you. Connect with past experience. Since you felt anxious when you wrote a math test, you're afraid it will happen again. Again, you're connecting with that past experience. You are listening to them. Normalize emotions. It seems very normal to me to be nervous before a test. That sure makes sense to me. And I'm going to help you by giving you all kinds of strategies going forward. One of the things that these strategies are evidence-based. They reside within the therapeutic approach called cognitive behavior therapy. You don't need a degree in psychology to implement them. As you'll see, the strategies are really quite simple. But what it does, it targets that kind of anxiety cycle, the negative thinking, the negative feelings, as well as the negative behaviors. And the negative thinking is often a characteristic of being stressed or being anxious, whether you're a child or whether you're an adult. And that becomes important because what you think will drive your emotions and will drive your behavior. If you have a presentation to go and you may be thinking, well, I'm going to say something stupid, I'm going to die of embarrassment. No one has ever died of embarrassment. That's going to elicit and activate negative emotions, the fear, the feelings of worry, and maybe you avoid, maybe you call in sick, and that's going to keep that anxiety cycle going. But the other really important message here is that negative thinking is bad for your brain, and positive thinking is really good for your brain. It elevates mood, it allows you to focus, allows you to think more clearly, and that is never a bad thing. So one of the things that we'll be talking about to help kids to think more positively, to adopt that positive attitude, because that kind of targets the worry, because they need to focus on good. If they're just focusing on worry, they're missing all the wonderful things that life has to offer. And encourage more realistic thinking. No one has ever died of embarrassments. Sometimes it is realistic thinking by focusing, maybe relabeling it as anxious, but excited to go to that birthday party. And one of the things we know that anxious kids definitely think negatively. And some of the really common negative thinking patterns, and frankly, you see them in adults as well, is catastrophizing. 100% probability that the worst outcome is going to occur, and it's illustrated here. I got a B+ on that test. I'll probably get held back a grade. Now that's catastrophizing. You see kids jumping to conclusions as if they're mind readers. Well, no one's looking at me. They must hate the new shirt. Well, maybe they're occupied with something else. But the one we're really going to be focusing on is that negative self-labeling. I got that question wrong. I'm so stupid, because that's one of the things I see quite a bit of it, is just that kind of really negative self-talk. And we're going to talk about ways to address that. And so it's illustrated here, brain look, ignoring all the good and focusing on the bad. And we're going to use a little strategy, a little CB strategy called cognitive reframing. And that's reviewing, reframing expectations about things, a situation, an event, and viewing it even more positively. And because you know what, if you worry all the time, you're going to miss all the wonderful things that life has to offer. So how do you deal with negative thoughts? Well, you recognize that negative thoughts, such as that negative self-talk. Really, you got a B+. You probably will still get into university on that one test. So that thought is not accurate. So let's reframe it going forward. Maybe the question is to focus on what you did right on that test. Maybe the solution here to think more positively is to ask for help about writing tests. That's something definitely teachers can help you with as well. So focusing on what went right, not just on what went wrong. That is the way you'll be encouraged to try again, because you may have got a bad mark on the first test. The birthday card, attending the birthday party may not have been as much as you had hoped for. But if you focus on what went right, such as chocolate cake, making a friend at their birthday party, you're more apt to try to go to another birthday party, give another presentation, ask for help to write a test going forward. So we're going to break that negative cycle by focusing more on a positive cycle of thoughts, feelings, and behavior. You received an invitation to a party. Maybe you're not going to say something stupid. Maybe you're actually going to have a good time. And you never know, it could be great, just like that Gwen Stefani song. And that kind of recasting it, feelings of being happy, excited, exhilarated, of trying to do something new. You go to that party and you never know, it could be great. One of the easiest peasiest strategies is having kids to list 3 good things. I've had parents, supper's not going to be served. You tell me one good thing about your day. I've had kids, parents driving home will ask, what is your good thing? Picking them up, what is your good thing? Or some people will actually work through it themselves, and definitely doing it with your kid to kickstart the process. It can be so many things. I love Lego. I love my family. A perfect example of this is this from a 9-year-old. This really cracked me up. You can see he wrote literally an essay of all the wonderful things. His family was mentioned 3 times, including his brother, but also on the list were carpets, pillows, duvets, and cushions. And clothes. Those were good things. It is the good things that this kid has. And as you can see, that positive thinking is good for your brain, and that is the first kickstart to kind of breaking that anxiety cycle. Now, we know there's all kinds of iterations of journaling that has a real positive impact on mental health. There is so much research on that. It is an evidence-based approach. You can do a brain dump. You can write all kinds of negative things about what's going on in your life. You ball it up and then you throw it away. Or you can do as illustrated here. What you do when you're anxious, you can see the glorious artwork that's there. I've had kids sequin it. Their artwork is absolutely incredible, but all you really do need is a piece of paper. And one of the ones we know that's really powerful impact to get kids to think more positively, to focus on the good in their life, not just the bad in their life, at the same time give them a way to try different things, is a gratitude journal. You can see here, clean sheets on bed. Let's celebrate that. But the weekly gratitude journal, they made a new friend. They went out and they made a new friend. And on Tuesday, they found the homework that was missing. But here on Friday, I made the swim team. We had pizza for lunch. So it's acknowledging and celebrating those little things that maybe kids had tried to avoid before. And now that the world has reopened again, we need to encourage them to try again as well. Now, there's all kinds of things. Clearly, that's for older kids, but there's all kinds of things for the little ones. I like this one. I am happy because, and the kid put down chicken nuggets. That would be I'd be happy too. On what went well this week, and it's day by day. On Monday it was soccer, trying out for the soccer team. So it doesn't take much, but we know that just doing that on a daily basis kind of rewires the brain to be happy. And we'll see that when that brain is happy, your ability to deal with all kinds of events going forward is definitely improved and enhanced. And it's one of the ways we break that anxiety cycle. So positive self-talk. There's all kinds of evidence about the benefits from it. When we know through the miracle of brainwaves and kind of scanning, brain scans as well. You think negatively, I'm so stupid, for example, I can't do this, I'm always failing things, I'd rather quit than fail. What happens there is a certain neurochemical called serotonin actually drops. And when it drops, then definitely low mood and irritability ensues. As soon as you start thinking positively, and whether you say it out loud, whether you write it down, and start using positive words, that serotonin increases again. And here is why positive self-talk is worth it. It helps kids to take risk, to encourage to take risk. Sometimes it is having to step outside your comfort zone, to go to that birthday party, maybe try out for a role in a theater production, or try out for an athletic team, or stand up and give a presentation to your group, or go up to somebody and just say hi. So it is all part and parcel of the skill set these kids need to deal with a brand new world, a world that, unlike previous generations, they didn't get to practice the skills they needed to deal with all kinds of novel kind of situations. So one of the ways too, to de-escalate that negative thinking, identify that your child is doing it. Definitely older kids, it'll be easier, but definitely for uh, younger kids, you might have to guide them through that. I find that kind of anxious kids, man, they think they're fortune tellers. They didn't see the pandemic coming, but they know that they're going to fail at this, or they know they're just going to get a terrible mark and not go to get into university. So helping them identify when those thoughts are negative and not helpful. And you can see that illustrated here. Whoops, I made a mistake. That's a more positive version than I'm so stupid. The reality is we all make mistakes, but we learn from mistakes going forward. I gave up. I'll never be able to do this. This is really hard, but I'm going to keep on trying, because that's the distillation of success. Sometimes is you read stories of successful people. They kept going. They kept trying. And we want to give those skills to kids so that they be independent and importantly confident. Just because you fail once doesn't mean you don't keep on trying. Because one of the things we know that positive self-talk is builds confidence, and I think that is one of the things we need to encourage kids, is to give them the skills they need to be more confident, to try different things, to cope with stress and change, and to help work through life's little challenges, things they may have accomplished by themselves, just being back in the classroom or on the playground or in a social situation with their peers. But in reality, we had to keep them safe going forward. But now they need to have the strategies to go and deal with all kinds of challenges. So one of the ways we talked about to handle that is to empathize, and that's that thing that we referred to as validate. We have to push them a little bit to try new things. But one of the most powerful tools I found is to go me too. I was anxious because we all are at some point in our lives. And this is what I did. This is what I found helpful. And that's how you model positivity. It just taught, say it out loud, because we often forget to do that. And put a yet at the end of it. You haven't been able to do it yet, and I'm going to help you. And remind them of all the challenges they've gone through, such as a pandemic. I mean, that little girl who had struggles going into school, is now running towards school. And it's those little challenges that were overcome that we need to celebrate as well. So you can see here the advantage of positive self-talk, the kitten looking in and seeing a lion. Um, but how you talk to yourself really kind of determines kind of your how you feel about who you are. And so there's all kinds of ways we can encouraging positive self-talk. There's actually a positive self-talk journal combining all the elements that we know works. Yeah, for some kids, you don't have to go through the entire thing, but just little things like what was the best part of your today was getting to think about what was a good thing. Maybe it is proud of themselves because maybe they went up and asked the teacher for help, something that maybe had been reluctant to do. Maybe they reached out and attended homework club to catch up on their missing assignments. Maybe they tried out for a part in a play, or they went to that birthday party and made a friend. And we need to celebrate that and make them consciously aware of a challenge they overtook, but also to the power of self talk that is positive. Reality is there are some kids who are worry warts. They are just kind of that kind of generalized anxiety. And these are kids who have difficulty tolerating uncertainty. Um, and nothing's more uncertain than a pandemic coming out of left field. Um, and so need to give them strategies to deal with that because life is such that there is no such thing as zero risk. There isn't. It is more about risk management than the exclusion of risk. There is a famous story occurred in New Jersey. Stolen Porsche careens out of control off an overpass in New Jersey, lands in a second-story apartment building in a bedroom, killing instantly. I can't remember the names of the poor victims. They were sound asleep in bed. Life is uncertain. Uh, Things happen that you don't expect all the time. So we need to give these kids strategies to deal with that. Because sometimes an OMG event that is can activate the anxiety is mom being late. What to do when mom is late. That can elicit a OMG response. And here we're going to use kind of cognitive-based problem solving, rewards, and brainstorming. Getting your child to definitely brainstorming with them. What could they do if you're late? Because that could happen. Traffic, maybe you're picking up pizza, maybe a little fender bender, and you have to exchange particulars. Giving your kid the strategies, the coping tools they need to deal with that. Maybe what they do, brainstorm, is to go and sit in the principal's office, maybe ask, get on an iPad, and then when you pick them up, you're gonna give them maybe pick up that pizza, stop at Mickey D's, give them rewards for facing their fear, for being brave. The next time that happens, you're going to say, well, you're a smart kid. What could you do? And then remind them of those strategies, because that's how you teach that independence, that confidence. You want them to internalize those strategies going forward. So that's what we're talking about, that kind of coping and problem solving skills, giving the problem solving skills to meet their challenges or their fears head on. And we do that through that think aloud. We often don't say anything when kids do something right. When they do something wrong, we're all over them, but we also need to think aloud and model ways to cope with all kinds of stressors and strains, whether it's a due date for a book report or in our case, maybe a bill payment. We do that through brainstorming and we do that through use of rewards. And telling kids that we need to focus on things that we can't control. You maybe can't control a pandemic. You maybe can't control the behavior of your friends. What you do need to do is focus on things you can't control. And nowhere was that made clearer than during a pandemic. Wearing the mask, washing the hands, knowing that we couldn't control the evolutionary pathway of the virus, but we could definitely reduce its impact through all those health measures going forward. So helping kids to learn and embrace the fact that uncertainty is inevitable. Because sometimes unpredictable is a good thing. A friend of mine got a divorce. Then she went on dating apps and oh boy. And fast forward a couple years later, couple months later, she was actually at Costco. She had two sons. They're kind of age group where you turn your head and they grow 6 inches. You turn back and, suddenly you've got to go to Costco to get new pants. So she's there buying pants. She's pulls out a pair. There's a tug on it. On the other end of the pair of pants is this guy. He says something funny. She laughs. She says something funny. He laughs. And that woman found love at Costco, happily married since then. Um, so, sometimes unpredictable is a good thing. Finding love was on her shopping list, but, sometimes you could win the lottery. That's I keep telling myself, even though I know chances of winning the lottery, two times being hit by lightning twice is lower probability than winning at the lottery, but I live in hope. It's a positive thinker. Well, there's an app for that. There's for older kids, there's all kinds of positive affirmations. Sometimes it's encouraging kids to go outside their comfort zone, to try new things, because you never know, you may be great. And of course, look at all those apps for that. You want to get a little education in just how many challenges parents are facing because their kids are more anxious than previous generations. You just have to type in anxiety apps, and you will be surprised just how many that come up. So we're now going on to our activity thing, and all I want to do is some member of the audience to maybe name one way that they could help their child or teen cope with anxiety.
Put it in chat.
Oh, put it in the chat. Yeah.
Plan ahead.
Yes. Excellent one. Very good.
Express gratitude.
Yes.
Negative thoughts.
Help them recognize their negative thoughts, plan ahead, express gratitude.
Remind them that they don't do it on their own.
Yes, that's a good one. That's a good one, especially for the little ones.
Ask them to provide one positive thing that happened during the day.
Perfect.
Remind them of previous success.
Yes, that's a big one. They dealt with COVID. That's not a chance of thing to celebrate. Okay, we're going to move on now, because now we've talked about negative thinking and changing it into positive thinking. We're now going to talk about emotions. One of the things to remember is that if you're working or supporting, or your own child is under the age of 20 and is in from 5 to 20, you're still dealing with a brain under construction, a brain under development. And so that's why teens have such big emotions naturally. And so that amygdala, that emotional center, is actually better developed than that thinking center of the brain. But that emotional center is not only anger, not only fear, but also to joy and elation and happiness. It is just not the negative. But when you're anxious, man, your emotions are negative. Look at all these words that define some of their emotions: feeling nervous, horrified, terrified, frightened, haunted. Nothing sounds good about that. And so we're going to replace those negative emotions with more positive emotions. As I mentioned before, that there is that interaction between the thinking center of the brain and that emotional center of the brain. When kids have those big emotions, when that amygdala is hyperactivated, you have what is known as amygdala hijack. The emotions are just bigger. The anger is bigger. The fear is bigger. And when that occurs, the thinking part of the brain kind of goes offline. But there are such simple strategies to put it back in the driver's seat, put a leash on the guard dog, and only let it off when there is something that's really, really requires that fight or flight response going forward. This strategy is literally called name it to tame it. Just by saying I'm anxious, just by saying I'm afraid, I'm worried, that actually calms that amygdala down, puts that thinking center of the brain in charge. You can say it out loud, you can write it, you can draw it, but just that something as simple as name it to tame it, name that emotion is a quick little strategy that they can deploy, maybe at the start of an exam, for example, maybe at the start of a job interview, or maybe when they're going into that classroom for the first time after a real long time being away. Now, for the little ones, you got to help them identify the bodily feelings associated with the emotions, giving them, identifying those emotions. And there's all kinds of activities to that. Sometimes it's just as simple as saying, when I'm anxious, this is what I feel, and then working with them as they identify when they're anxious. Maybe it's butterflies in the tummy, maybe it's that kind of jittery sense, maybe it's headaches or stomach aches. Then you help them to label and identify that emotions. You're happy, you're upset. Oh, I can see you're anxious. And maybe it's something as simple as saying, this is why I didn't sleep much. That's why I'm irritable or anxious. And using opportunities while you're maybe watching a movie, Netflix, reading a book. How do you think that man feels? How have you ever felt like that? And giving them the tools they need to address those negative emotions and replacing them with positive emotions. And we'll talk about strategies such as name it to tame it. There is also kinds of journal activities for older kids that kind of really help them for sorting for their difficult emotions. I mean, what was some of the changes that left them feeling the most stress? For some kids, it was returning to a school, but returning to a brand new school, a high school, where maybe now you have 1,200 kids going through the hallways. Is for some kids that was stressful. For some kids it was group work. It was just kind of navigating the social dynamics within a classroom. And what small changes, again, getting them to focus, that help them adapt, or what was pleasantly surprising. Maybe they made a connection with a kid they hadn't made a connection with, or maybe they found out, that history teacher was pretty awesome. And so just kind of getting them to focus on things that resulted in positive emotions as well. There's all kinds of ways to help kids manage big emotions. One of the benefits of visuals, the brain loves them. They remember them, and if they remember them, the brain's going to retrieve it. So yeah, as you can see here, the 5 fingers are up. One of the things I just want to point out, Mr. Thumb, finger number 1, is literally, it's okay to be anxious, but it's not okay to be mean. And that's something to remind kids about, that, anxiety doesn't feel pleasant, but you don't have to be mean to others. You can see here some of the strategies. Use your words to say how you feel, and that's that name it to tame it. But there's all kinds of other strategies, such as asking for help, whether you need to talk to somebody, or maybe you need some help for writing a test, for maybe you get a little anxious before a big test. There's all kinds of ways we can help. The school staff, the psychologist assigned to your school, the guidance counselor, there's an awesome resource. Sometimes the classroom teacher as well, or sometimes maybe you talking about what you did when you had to write a big test. For some kids, when they're dealing with big emotions, giving them a list of things to do as illustrated here. Sometimes it's drawing or writing about how they feel. I remember Safeway, magazine sections were completely gone. And there's all these coloring books there, because those coloring books, drawing books work. They got you to focus on something else, and got that thinking part of the brain engaged because you had a color within the lines. And I just want to bring out one thing. Remember when the toilet paper was hoarded? Remember that? Or remember when you couldn't buy any sugar? Okay, that was my COVID reverie there. Now, one of the strategies you have kids use to deal with those big emotions is called grounding. It is a powerful tool, and it is a simple, easy to use tool. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 1 things you can smell, and 1 good thing about yourself. So getting that thinking part of the brain engaged. I love how it says 1 good thing about yourself, but you see that being deployed, going into something that maybe causes your child anxiety. Maybe it is that big test, maybe it is that public present, or maybe it is that job interview. There's also ones for little ones. Take 5 awareness, where name one thing you can see, name one thing you can feel, and so on and so on. And working with them, going through that and practicing to make it more automatic so they can deploy it. It is a powerful, powerful technique, and really it is so easy and peasy to use, to quote a kid I've worked with. And one of the things here is important to note. This is how you put yourself in control of a situation, how you help your child put themselves in a control of a situation, circumventing that amygdala hijack going forward. I have talked about this activity on multiple occasions. It was actually something we did during the various iterations of the lockdown. Suddenly we can only have like 2 people at Christmas. It was called the M&M feeling game. Now I'll tell you, we had beverages. There are some beverages that work with M&Ms, and some that don't. Just FYI. But it was just something, it was fun and engaging activity. It got kids, whether it's little kids, older kids, or adults, to be more aware of their emotions and maybe focus on something, red one, focus on one thing that made you happy. And for every one yellow one, maybe something that made you anxious. And again, orange, focus on what one thing, that good chance, that a good choice you made today. It turned out to be a surprisingly fun activity. So, kind of winding all those things together, 6 ways you can help your kid manage emotions is that validate, listen to what they're saying. You will shut conversation down when they're talking to you about being anxious. If you say something like, everyone is anxious, it's true, everyone is anxious, but they may not feel they're being heard. And you're going to use a co-regulation strategy. And what co-regulation is, just not sitting beside them, is something more active about that. It is practicing those calming strategies, practicing counting back, something as simple as counting back from 10, name it to tame it, right alongside them. So you're modeling it, you're thinking out loud. For some kids, that encouraging that positive self-talk. Maybe it's something as today is a fresh start, or I can't do this instead of I can't do that. As I mentioned, the drawing and writing is such an effective strategy for some kids, the way to express their feelings. You don't have to name it out loud, you can draw it. And problem solving, that's a big one really, is coming up with the solutions for the challenges together, giving them nothing. Sometimes all you just need is a piece of paper to write down what are the challenges and what are some possible solutions, such as going to the principal's office, getting on her iPad and playing fun, engaging math games till mom comes home. And we know that positive emotions, man, it just allows you to focus better. Your brain actually works better. I focus it and functions at its best. So thinking positive, talking positive, feeling positive. And of course, as you know, there's all kinds of apps for that to help you. But it could be something as simple as starting off your morning alongside your child and encouraging them to start off 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take those 5 deep breaths. List 4 things about you that you notice, that you can see. List 3 things you're grateful for. Say 2 positive statements about yourself, and name 1 thing you're looking forward to today. Maybe it is pizza at lunch, or maybe it is going to the dance. Remember that? High school dances? All those kind of things that some kids totally missed out on. And one of the things we know, that anxiety presents itself in different ways. Sometimes it'll impact, as sleep. Sometimes the bodily symptoms are things that are a challenge. And we're going to talk about ways to address all of those things because what becomes important, especially in that kind of middle years, senior years kind of vibe, they don't want anyone to know and that they're using their tools. Although I find this generation's changing a little bit. We're taking mental health challenges because at some point in time, a lot of people have them. And we all need help with regards to that. Sometimes just more tools in our toolkit. So they're a little better about it. But anyway, the on-the-go tools, they help you focus, help you think more clearly, help you problem solve. You can do them anywhere. These tools are private. And for some kids, they don't want anyone knowing that they're using them. And yet these strategies are so simple. As I mentioned, the apps that are available for anxiety are just unbelievable. A lot of them are free as well. And we're going to talk about some distraction techniques. We're talking about breathing exercises. And there's 50 coping skills listed there. We're just going to focus on a few of them. And sometimes it's hugging a family member, sometimes it's hugging a pet. It's going out for a walk. It's exercising. It's creating art, and sometimes it is getting outside your comfort zone just a little bit, and trying something brand new because you don't know. You might be great at it.
We have a few questions, Dr. Phelps. Do you want to address them now or do you want to wait?
That's a good question. You're going to give me that executive decision power, Ms. Producer Director?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Maybe we will take, just hold on. So I'm going to see what point I'm in. As you can see, it's it's a no expense spared kind of production. Well, I just wanted to say one thing, and then we'll go take that question. One of the things, making a plan, it is so important, especially when those kids are making those kind of big changes. They're about to go to university and they're a little bit anxious about that. Making a plan of action, that's how one of the biggest stress busters is having a plan of action. So that problem solving kind of approach. Maybe it is about what do I need to do to go to university, and you can actually embed it in a journal. That's one of the ways you reduce your anxiety, reducing your stress, to have a plan of action. Yeah. More questions?
Okay. Would take on the form of depersonalization.
Yes. Yes, that has definitely occurred. It's happening to somebody else. Sometimes if it's a real kind of traumatic event, it is definitely in some sense it's a survival tool. Get you out of that situation. It's happening to somebody else and not you.
Okay, next one. How do these strategies get applied to kids who have sensory processing issues and ADHD?
Well, that's a good.
The ones that struggle identifying how they feel and who really struggle with being in the moment, do these activities apply?
Yes, they would.
Sometimes my child gets so upset that she will not talk and can't stop crying or yelling. Is it best to sit with her and give her a hug until she calms down, or give her space?
I would probably in that instant give her space. I mean, nobody knows your child better than you. And in this kind of forum, it's, I would probably give them space. And that's something we would probably do in the classroom as well. Like sometimes, like when you're just feeling those big emotions, sometimes you just need someone to sit back and sit there and not say anything till you're ready to speak again.
I'm curious how you would approach a child who is reluctant to using these strategies. My son really dislikes writing and is really negative when I try to share strategies with him. We often use it's okay to feel anxious, but not okay to be rude or treat others poorly. There is a lot of irritability and shutting down. I'm trying not to push too much and find a good balance. Also continuing to model with my own behavior and sharing my experience. I'm just hoping at some point he's picking up on these things and starts using them.
Yes, that's true. And yeah, at some point in time, what I would recommend is to make the writing process a little easier through technology, getting them to write about something they like. And I'll be honest, rewards. I love my job, but if they stop paying me, and that is a reward, I don't know if I'd come as much as I do. I don't know if I'd even come on time. And definitely for a lot of these kind of cognitive behavior therapy strategies, the use of rewards, and it is a big one. For adults, sometimes it's self-administration of rewards, but for little kids and for teenagers and middle years, the rewards work. To find out, we can help you find out a whole plethora of rewards of what motivates your kid. They write 3 lines, maybe they get 3 minutes extra iPad time. They write 5 lines, maybe they get 5 minutes extra. Maybe they can choose their dessert for that night. Maybe they get to choose what they watch on Netflix. And that's how you kickstart the process. One of the fundamentals of behavior therapy is a thing called behavior trapping. Good behavior engenders more good behavior. Once they start writing and they kind of get past that, I'm not going to do it because I hate it, and because it's a way for me to get some sort of incentive or reward, sometimes that kickstarts the process. Maybe it's finding what they're interested about. Sometimes too, it's talking into the computer, because that's what these kids will be writing in the future, and the computer can convert it into text, because clearly writing has become so aversive, so anxiety producing, that your child is shutting down now. Okay. So let's go on to some of the calming strategies to address maybe those bodily symptoms. Definitely for the little ones, there's all kinds of ways to help them. They need more direct instruction, and using these strategies, a bit like learning to read. They need to practice. Learning to drive, you need to practice. So something simple as taking a deep breath, smell the flowers, blow out the candles. One of the strategies I always found that helped for me when I was anxious in the moment is the counting strategy, whether you're counting slowly up to the number 10 or backwards from the number 10, that's more apt to induce that thinking part of the brain. There's all kinds of relaxation strategies that can work. And here there sometimes too, it's giving them more than one strategy that they can deploy. I remember at the start of a meeting, we had to sit quietly for 5 minutes. I thought I was going to, go crazy. You focus on your breathing 5 whole minutes. And I wasn't the only one at that meeting. There were other people with their eyes open looking about the room. That tells me one thing, that not every coping strategy is a good fit for your child. You know your child better than anyone else. It may be a collaborative effort. Maybe it's asking them as they get older what strategy works. But you got to find a strategy. You got to stick with it. You got to practice it. And definitely using more than one strategy as illustrated here. Sometimes it is taking deep breaths. Sometimes it is meditating or bouncing on their ball or using their stress ball fidget, for example. There's also kinds of deep breathing kind of exercises. One of the most effective ones I have found, it's not illustrated here though, is taking 2 short breaths, 2 short inhalations. That kind of derails the whole unleashing of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system kind of response, and then exhaling. You can see that being deployed in a moment of anxiety, whether it's a big exam, going for a job interview, going into that classroom, or going into that birthday party. There's also this strategy here of 8-4-7. So you breathe in for 4 seconds and then you hold your breath for 7 seconds and repeat. There's all kinds of deep breathing exercises for little ones too, we'll be talking about. All the benefits that have been clearly documented, from reducing stress and anxiety to helping you focus more clearly and slowing and calming that nervous system response. There's all kinds of mindful breathing activities for kids here. You can see this one. I love this one. Imagine your belly is a balloon. Slowly, slowly breathe in, breathe out. And as I mentioned, visuals and acronyms really kind of help with the memory. And if it goes into long-term memory, it'll be there to be retrieved and used going forward. So you can see it here. Take a minute and stop. S stands for stop. T stands for take 3 breaths. O, observe around you. Notice maybe 3 things around you. And P, picture a calming place. That is just one of the strategies to help kids kind of live in the moment, deal with the bodily symptoms associated with anxiety. Also, to progressive muscle relaxation, there, where you tense your feet, then you relax them, then you work your way up through that process of tensing and relaxing all the way up to the top of your head. And there's all kinds of benefits for that. It helps you deal with stress, and it is really a really good way to kind of facilitate sleep. Sometimes anxious kids have trouble sleeping. Sometimes ADHD kids have trouble sleeping. I've had parents lie in bed with their child and co-regulate with them and get them to do that strategy. And eventually, at some point, you're going to encourage independent use. What could you do if you're having trouble with anxiety, if you're having trouble sleeping? Remember to use that strategy, just like you reminded them you're a bright kid. What could you do when mom is late? Now, the benefits of exercises are well documented for dealing with anxiety and improving sleep. There's also the phenomenon that's called ecotherapy, exercising outside. And what's really important about exercise, you don't have to run a marathon for it to be of benefit. There is benefits to it regardless of the intensity or duration or the type of exercise. Just going for a nice walk out in the real world with the sunlight rapidly approaching summer and birdsong. I saw my first robin yesterday. I got very excited about that. Spring is on its way. Just the kind of a way to help kids deal with anxiety, and frankly, it's something you could do with them as well. There's all kinds of documented activities confirmed by brain scans, the benefits of meditation, of listening to music. For some kids, that's their go-to strategy. Whenever they're anxious, they need to deal with it before they can move on. They engage that thinking part of the brain. They process that music, quiets the amygdala down, and they're good to go. And when the amygdala is quieted down, then the bodily symptoms rapidly dissipate because that's what causes them. Tai Chi, if you want to have a really enjoyable experience, you just walk into a room with a bunch of 4-year-olds doing yoga. If that doesn't lift your spirits, nothing will. There's all kinds of visualization techniques. Visualize a happy place. Maybe it's a cottage. Maybe it's your backyard. Maybe it's Hawaii, or maybe it's this sun-kissed beach. Maybe it's a puppy, or maybe it's a beloved pet or a loved one. One of the most effective strategies, especially as they go up the grade ladder, are these visualization strategies, confidence builders, where they're mentally rehearsing a scary situation, whether it's writing an exam, going for a job interview, maybe going to the birthday party, mentally rehearsing the scary situation. But the most important part of that strategy is visualizing it success. That's a strategy used by sports psychologists to help world-class athletes. Your child may not be a world-class athlete, but who knows? They may be an awesome, public speaker. They may be, a drama person extraordinaire. And one of the most amazing things is how many people on Broadway and in films have dealt with social anxiety. Well, as I mentioned, there's all kinds of websites there. There's KidThink. One of the best one is Anxiety Canada, all kinds of CBT-based strategies. That is the #1 recommended way of coping and dealing with anxiety. It's got resources for parents, resources for kids, especially those middle years and senior years. Sometimes they need to go on that and look at it themselves. That might be a way to benefit them. And one of the powerful things about the Anxiety Canada is there's little videos produced by kids who dealt with anxiety. And sometimes that peer-to-peer is more helpful than what the adults are saying to them, as well as all kinds of strategies, some of which we didn't talk about, such as step ladders. Um, There is an app for that, as I mentioned, there's a gajillion. There's Calm, there's Mindshift CBT, that's one of the ones that produced by Anxiety Canada. But Kids Think has a whole bunch of other strategies, and it's illustrated here. There's also kinds of recent additions, such as Happify and MoodFit are some of the more recent ones. I've had kids who it was like 5 minutes of rain, wasn't doing it for them, but they really found a benefit of mind shift. As I mentioned before, if that strategy doesn't work, you've got to stick to it for at least a couple of weeks, then try something else or try another one. There's all kinds of books out there because you are not alone. There are multiple parents dealing with how to support their kid that were dealing with anxiety. Maybe they weren't anxious pre-COVID, but now just all the stresses and strains of life during a pandemic has made them a little more anxious than you would like them to be, and frankly, that they would like to be. So there's all kinds of books that helping your anxious child is one of the ones that's most highly recommended by Dr. Rafferty. He's really brilliant. But there's just all kinds of things out there. Well, there's also anxious books for anxious kids. There's just a sampling of them. Hey Warrior is a big one, but there's also picture books, story books that can help kids learn about anxiety and ways to deal with anxiety going forward. One of the ways too, is that think good, feel good. That's the only take-home message you have from it, that would be it. And one of the things here, what to tell yourself when you're feeling anxious, thank you, anxiety, lean into it, for always trying to look out for me. But it's okay now, I got this. I know what to do. And let's celebrate when they are brave. I mean, facing your fears is not easy, and celebrate when they are brave. Sometimes that's by giving them a pudding cup or taking them to Mickey D's. The big thing here is practice makes permanent. Thinking differently, just like something like reading, something like driving requires practice. And practice actually makes it permanent because you want it to be automatic. You want it to be internalized, those strategies, so they can take them from the home into the school and then onwards to whether it's a university, Red River, or a job, because we all want these kids to be confident. We all want to encourage them to be independent, to get that diploma, go off to university. One of the things that's always kind of amazed me when I ask parents what they want for their kids when they're adults, very rarely have I heard certified general accountant. People want their kids to be happy. And these are some of the ways you can help kids to think more positively, to feel more positively, to have all these tools in their toolkit to deal with all kinds of things that life will throw at them, because that their challenges are out there, and we want them to challenges that they can overcome and deal with effectively. So I'm going to ask you here again, I'm going to reel in my boss. And my technical director, um, to ask the audience, the viewers at home, one way they could help their child or teen cope with anxiety. Okay, well, there were a whole bunch of strategies listed before, and I know we got a little bit longer because of the technical difficulties, which made me anxious. But I counted back from 10. I named it to tame it, and I did well. Co-regulate. Oh, good. Well, one of the things here, I just want to indicate here, if you have any questions, and thank you for asking those questions, we're here to support. That's what ESS does. I think educational support services, the first S is support. We're here to support you, but so too are members of your school staff. So email us with any questions. Maybe there's something you want some more information or additional resources. And anyway, thank you very much for attending. We have planned for next November, the next Staying Well session will be helping your child and teen with dyslexia succeed academically. So thank you again for being here. Coping with the technical difficulties. And again, we'd all members of the Staying Well team would like to thank you for attending. Have a good night.